Hear that? That's the sound of speechless. Like when you give her an unforgettable gift from Jared the Galleria of Jewelry. Whether it's one of the hundreds of new pieces in our collection, one of the exclusive pieces you can only find at Jared, or a custom piece we create just for you, Jared is the place to find the gift.
I love it.
That takes her breath away. And that's why he went to Jared.
You can always count on Bud Light, just like you can always count on Tailgate Terry. Without Tailgate Terry, you wouldn't have cold Bud Lights and 7-layer dip at every pregame. That's 56 layers per season. Just the right amount if you ask Terry. Tailgate Terry is famous among friends. He deserves a Bud Light. Enjoy responsibly. Bud Light Beer, 80 St. Louis, Missouri.
Our new presenting sponsor is ZipRecruiter. Are you looking for a smarter way to hire great candidates? With ZipRecruiter, 80% of employers who post a job get a quality candidate to the site in just one day. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010.
Mike, did you get a haircut?
I did.
You look very dapper.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted you to know that I did. My eyes picked it up.
Well, thank you.
You're in the 06010. Never gonna hustle in case you didn't know. Matthew Berry, TMR.
You guys go ahead, give me grief for being on SportsCenter for 45 seconds.
I think you could do better than me because I don't think you could.
Jailbait, Field Yates.
You're terrible at hashtag improv. At Field Yates. At Field Yates.
Stephania Bell.
Oh, don't let Barry convert you.
Secret Squirrel, Daniel Dodd.
Make it happen.
Mediocre fantasy advice.
You're older than people realize.
That never stops.
Loyal 06010 listener.
Welcome in to the Wednesday edition of the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. We have a special guest joining us this morning, and I'm going to tell you guys about that in a second because Matthew is out today. We have a commitment here at ESPN for a huge number of people, and because of that meeting, which takes place later on Wednesday afternoon, Matthew has to tape his TV show this morning. Normally, that's an afternoon commitment before it airs. Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. Also Monday on ESPN. Also found on the Watch ESPN app. I'm a company man. So you spend every day with someone for 3 years, and all of a sudden you got it down pat.
You know how to do promos.
Beyond that, if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably a little bit later than you're normally accustomed to. Daniel, obviously the star of that show, also has to be at that taping. So he's with us now, but Gabe is going to handle the editing. So it'll get out a little bit later than normal. We apologize for the delay. Now that the housekeeping is out of order, or is in order, taken care of, it's our pleasure to welcome in Matt Bowen.
Yay.
Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Matt Bowen, longtime NFL defensive back. 7 years in the league?
7 years, that's right.
7 years in the league. He also played collegiately at Iowa, as we were discussing on the podcast before this. If someone asks you, like, all right, you played in the NFL, like, which team did you play for? Do you identify with one? We obviously played for a number of teams. You were in Buffalo, Washington, right? Did you have Houston for a cup of coffee or no?
No, I started in St. Louis.
St. Louis
with Coach Martz and then Lovey.
Yep. In Chicago, yep.
You know, the greatest show on turf.
Right.
Lost to the Saints in the playoffs. Bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
Oof.
So would you say you're a Ram? Like, is that what you say?
No, I say I'm a Hawkeye.
Hawkeye.
Yeah.
There's so much pride.
When you start covering the league, you have to be unbiased in everything you do.
Sure.
And when you bounce around that much, as I did, 4 teams in 7 years, you don't look at one team and say, well, that's my squad.
Right.
No, I love playing in Green Bay. I absolutely loved it. Loved it. I grew up in the Chicago area, so it was 3 hours from home. I remember we played a Monday night game, and it was down in Champaign, University of Illinois, because they were redoing Soldier Field. Mm-hmm. And that's my favorite game of all time.
Really?
Why?
Just because it felt like I was playing against my childhood a little bit.
Uh-huh.
It's Monday night, everyone's watching, and it was different because it was on a college campus, an awesome crowd. And we started the game, and it had to be at least 4 or 5 plays into the game, first drive, and Favre rolls out, finds Donald Driver for an 80-yard score. And then we started running up the score on them. And I think I got a couple scores late to get back into it. But it was just my favorite game to play against my childhood because I knew people were watching. I knew a lot of people were in the crowd. And for me, it was a special moment to go in there and beat them. I'll be honest, just to beat them.
Sure. I mean, it must be a pretty, not conflicting emotions, but perhaps a little bit confusing, right? I mean, like the team that you grew up rooting for?
It was, but you only get so many opportunities to do that, especially, you know, with my career path and having injuries and an ACL and all that stuff. You bounce around. The cool thing about bouncing around, though, is you get to make so many friendships and relationships, especially with coaches, trainers in the NFL. And obviously I was in the training room quite a bit.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
You get to know so many good people in the NFL. We don't talk about that enough. You know, we always focus on the head coaches. Some of these assistant coaches in the NFL are outstanding.
Sure.
Outstanding. And I got to play for some great coaches. You know, play for Joe Gibbs. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, Greg Williams, who I respect a ton, play for Greg Williams. Dick Duran, Mike Martz, Coach Sherman up in Green Bay. So, Coach Spurrier.
Is that right?
No, you know, Coach Spurrier's stories are great. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but
ball coach.
No, yeah.
I love Coach Spurrier. I did. I really did. And Coach was different because he had that college approach. So it was
more of a CEO type style?
No, not a CEO type style, just that how he cared for his players.
Right. And you've always heard that.
Yeah.
You know, I was at
amazing.
Miami, so we were, you know, we definitely were playing against some Spurrier teams when I was there, but you knew how much his players loved him.
Yes.
And that's been obvious even all the way through South Carolina.
Yeah, he was great. It didn't work out for us. You know, I've always said, you know, everyone looks at Coach Spurrier and said, oh, we didn't get the job done. Well, you know, what about us? We didn't get the job done either as players. You know, players got to take some responsibility. We're going to get into that in less than a month with some teams making changes at the top.
No doubt.
Hey, some of these players, you got to take responsibility for that too.
I think about this a lot. I think about it during the summer when we had Dave Gettleman and John Dorsey fired. I thought to myself, what has the standard gotten to where a GM or a head coach is not satisfactory when John Dorsey helps the Chiefs to yet another division title last year? Dave Gettleman built a roster that goes to the Super Bowl in 15-1 2 years ago. So to hear a former player say, hey, like, some of this has to fall on their shoulders too, is probably something that not a lot of people are willing to say, but has a ton of truth to it.
It does, and especially in pro coaching. And I've had some experience now coaching at the high school level for 3 years.
Yeah, state champs again, right?
Yeah, 2 years in a row. We won the state championship this year with our third-string quarterback.
Is that right?
Look at that.
CJ West.
No excuses. Next man up.
He was an offensive lineman his freshman year.
Is that
and that's
right?
the cool
Really?
thing about high school.
What, he shrink?
No, that's just the cool thing about how he was a big kid as a freshman. When you're a big kid as a freshman,
you put offensive line.
Right.
Offensive line. And the cool thing about high school football is kind of the daily narrative of it and how teams change, how they deal with adversity because they are just young men at the time. And to see him do that and to progress and suddenly make plays and win a state championship, just an awesome
And
story.
great photos. And by the way, we'll promo your Instagram account. Later.
Matt Bowen 41, right?
Matt Bowen, is it Matt Bowen 41?
On Instagram it is, yes.
Yeah.
See, so Matt Bowen, you can also find him on Twitter at Matt Bowen, right? Just
Matt Bowen 41.
Matt Bowen 41. And we'll plug it again, but honestly, I love your Instagram account because you get the great pictures of Wisconsin, which, you know, I won't visit for other than like 3 months of the year when it's warm, but it's always beautiful shots.
3 weeks of the year when it's warm.
Great high school football pics all the time. And then all your awesome, you know, X's and O's and like your family thing that you did on Thanksgiving about like how to beat your
the turkey bowl
brother-in-law,
place.
the turkey bowl or whatever. That was so fantastic. Great stuff. One of my favorite follows.
Yeah, agreed on that. It's great to have Matt here this morning. He's going to help us out to get to a bunch of news.
Rewind. Fantasy news
from the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
We needed some good news this week. We did in the NFL. We needed it because it's been a rough couple of weeks. Let's just be frank. Injuries have been a bummer in a major way. We've had some incredibly serious ones. We continue to monitor Ryan Shazier's progress. And we certainly wish him the best in his recovery. Carson Wentz tears his ACL on Sunday. He's out for the year. Officially placed on IR yesterday. No surprise there. But we got good news, Stephania. Last night, Aaron Rodgers took to Instagram, speaking of good Instagram follows, and said he has been medically cleared. Does that mean, and I think the people's instant reaction is, does that mean on Sunday he's playing no matter what, and there are no frills, there are no concerns? This is a Aaron Rodgers at 100%. Crank him up.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because you got to wait for the team to say that he's definitively the starter. But just going back to his Instagram for a second, the shower cap on his head, like before he goes into surgery, great pick, great look on his face, and he basically gave a lot of credit to the team physicians, rehab staff, and we've been monitoring what he's been doing in practice, working with the scout team. You hear from his teammates throwing 45, 50-yard bombs. So as far as functionality and what he can do, you think he's totally ready. It's a question of what the coaches feel like he can be ready to do on Sunday. I have a hard time imagining that they're going to be like, well, we don't think you're quite ready. But from a fantasy perspective, I'm sure people are wondering, like, I saw it on Twitter, a couple people saying, well, do you think he just goes in for a limited time? Is it a controlled outing? No. And with the case like this, when you heard about the medical decision making in the background, it's really about, are we comfortable with him getting back and taking contact? Because he's shown what he can do on the rehab side. And when you have a fracture like this, surgically repaired, you're not worried about the hardware breaking. Occasionally there's a little more stress at the bone, right where the hardware and the bone interface. So if he got hit just the right way, could he be at risk of refracturing? Sure. But if he got hit just the right way, that's how the injury happens in the first place. So I think what you got by him being medically cleared is they're satisfied with the healing to this point, and they believe the reward outweighs the risk, and that decision is made in conjunction with the player.
Earlier this year, Sam Bradford had an injury going into a game, and we were all kind of weary of him playing. I mean, it seemed like it was a surprise. I believe it was a Monday night game that he went in there, and you were like, from the very first snap, he looked uncomfortable.
Right. And that was a knee and a little bit a question of instability. I mean, you'd be far more worried if it was a soft tissue injury coming back.
Right. So what I was going to say is, like, it does not, that the tenor of your comments feels a lot different than when Sam Bradford returned. Not to make an apples to apples comparison, but Matt, there are a couple of questions people are wondering. I think if you rostered Aaron Rodgers or if you grabbed him this week, absent having Tom Brady or Russell Wilson, maybe Ben Roethlisberger in your roster, like, come on, especially with the Carson Wentz injury, like, you're probably starting Aaron Rodgers. But Jordy Nelson is a player that might be the most discussed Packer this week. Devontae Adams has proved he's a stud. I mean, that dude's about to get paid this offseason. But Jordy Nelson, I think people are wondering, and Matt, amongst your many strengths here at ESPN is your film work. Jordy Nelson has evaporated over the past however many games Aaron Rodgers has missed. Is this some sort of regression of skill? Is it as simple as the quarterback that he has a rapport that's perhaps unmatched in the NFL between any other wide receiver and quarterback has been gone, and we expect to, immediately when Aaron Rodgers returns, Jordy Nelson's fantasy relevance returns as well?
Well, I think you bring up a good point. And chemistry with players in the field. I mean, you see it in the secondary. Safeties and corners that are accustomed to working together, communication skills, they know each other's talents or weaknesses. I think you saw that with Brett Hundley at quarterback, and not that he didn't trust Jordy Nelson, he had better chemistry with Adams. And also, you're going to have tighter window throws to Jordy Nelson. And we were talking about this before we got in the air. The back shoulder throw. Throwing a guy open. What does it mean to throw a guy open? It means if I'm next to field and I'm hip to hip down the sideline, the ball's still coming.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the defensive back has position. It does not matter because Aaron Rodgers can put the ball wherever he wants. He wants to put it off field, shoulders there. Back shoulder's there. Back hip is there. He wants to throw it down the field. Or he knows, hey, look, when you get to 15, 17 yards down the field, if you don't have leverage on him, run the comeback.
Right.
Okay, these are little things we don't talk about. You don't really see even when you're watching film. It's just that you know these guys, in terms of their chemistry on the field, is unmatched. It's unmatched. And Jordy Nelson is an interesting story because I never thought I would rank Jordy Nelson in the late 40s, and we were doing that some of our weeks.
Yeah,
because the production wasn't there. And now where do we have him? And this is the question for me. You don't really know where to put him. I think right now I have him around 15, 16, 17. Same with you, Field.
Yep.
I have Adams higher. Just because of Adams' recent production. If you watch Adams on film right now, his releases at the line of scrimmage, that's where the game is won. Wide receiver and defensive back at the line of scrimmage are unmatched.
Yep.
Him getting off the ball right now is amazing.
Right.
And his body control down the field, catching the fade routes, catching the back shoulder throws as well. But his release off the line of scrimmage, his separation speed. With Jordy Nelson, a different player, but Jordy Nelson's body control and ability to adjust to the football is special. It's a special talent. And Aaron Rodgers, with that chemistry on the field, knows where to put the football every time. It's the most frustrating thing is the defensive back.
Right, because you have great coverage, you have perfect leverage,
you
everything right.
You go to coach, hey, coach, what do I do? hey, good throw, good catch. What are you going to say?
You don't do anything. You go back and try to get the next one.
Right.
So that's good news on Aaron Rodgers, and obviously a very favorable outlook that I think Matt and I share on Nelson. He's back inside each of our top 20s. A season loss for Jordan Reed, and there's no other way to put it, as he officially was put on injured reserve yesterday.
This is a guy who has yet to complete a season. And, I feel for him to a degree, but we were talking about player responsibility. I mean, this is a guy who came to camp and announced that he had an injury instead of presenting himself sooner and getting that taken care of. So consider this. His last game that he played in was week 8, but he also was out week 3 because of an injury, and there was a bye in week 5. So he played 5 games plus 1 catch in a 6th. Then that was when he hurt the hamstring, and he hasn't been back since. He has a career low in receptions with 27, targets with 35, receiving yards with 211, and only 2 touchdowns. So I ask you, after I made my case, we know we talk about him at our summit that we do every year. You guys are familiar with where I stood on this because I think there's been a pattern. This is another year to that pattern. How are you going to evaluate him next year?
I don't know if you...
Go ahead.
Well, you look at guys that are similar, like Ingram in New York. Okay, you'd much rather have him, younger, healthier, has a similar type of game. And obviously New York's going to be different next year. It's going to be a unique situation. We don't know even what the offense is going to be like or who's going to be throwing the football. But that type of player, because I think there's a place for that right now in the NFL. If you look at college football, especially at the high school level where everything starts gravitating towards the pros, tight ends are really oversized slot receivers.
Right.
That's what they are.
They're
they create
bigger
matchups.
and faster now.
Right. And they're route running. And that was always a thing about Jordan Reed. It's his route running. It's his route running. His footwork. That's what you see out of, I'm not going to say a slot receiver, but a bigger wide receiver. Someone who could sink the hips, get out of the break, and separate to the football. Now, what he can do in the open field after that. But we've always said availability.
Yep.
Availability is much more important than talent in this league.
I'm going to say cliches like you can't make the club from the tub.
But they're true.
They're true because of players like Jordan Reed, who going into next year might not make my top 5 tight ends. An unfathomable thought 2 years ago. Tevin Coleman, Stephania, I was surprised to learn he's in the concussion protocol.
Yeah, I was aware of it. Just sort of,
fine.
Right. Well, I think that we don't hear much about the news really till later in the week. And with Devontae Freeman running the way that he has, and Tevin Coleman's value from a fantasy perspective sort of went down the minute Devontae Freeman came back from injury. It was sort of under the radar. But the standard that he's in the protocol, and we'll see where he stands this week.
Good news for them, I suppose. He has an extra day to get healthy. They play on Monday night against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Frank Gore, Stephania, this is a Thursday night game. So obviously practice is pretty limited for the entire roster, but he did not practice on Tuesday. You concerned at all about this?
Yeah, when they labeled it every week, Frank Gore is out of practice and always says not injury related or rest, because Frank Gore is amazing. It's never injury related. This week it says rest/hand, but the rest is first.
Right.
So I think when a guy carries 140 yards from scrimmage and he's like one of the oldest backs in the NFL, and it's rest. He's going to play on Thursday.
Yeah, I feel like tomorrow, I actually have a hard time. I should say hard time, but I would prefer not to start Frank Gore tomorrow because I think that Denver defense could swallow him up.
And let's
but nothing to do with the hand.
He's probably also, we talked about this yesterday, what he looked like at the end of that game last week, beat up, blood on his uniform, real, like an Madden squad player. And it's going to be tough to put together a similar outing on a Thursday night.
He's an all-time teammate, is Frank Gore. Hunter Henry, Stephania, another Saturday game. Remember, there are 2 Saturday games this week, the Lions and Bears, and then also the Chargers and the Chiefs. What's the status with him? I know he was a player that Matt viewed as a potential breakout candidate before the season, and the last 5 weeks have shown why. Yeah.
And then, so injured. I should be careful how I say that, on the injury report with a calf issue, so limited in practice. Pretty good if it's the first injury report and he's limited and it's not that he's out or he's at least involved in the practice. But if you've got anything like that, they're going to limit your reps during the week. But because it's Saturday, kind of stay tuned. We should have a good idea by Thursday.
Right, so they practiced on Tuesday, of course, because of the accelerated schedule. He's really become the player that I know you were excited about going into this year over the past 5 or 6 weeks.
The match ability, athleticism, the speed, the size. Phil Rivers is dialed in right now.
He sure is, man.
He really is. If you look at his tape, obviously the numbers reflect that too. He is dialed in. I think he's jumped into the MVP talk. In the back end,
how happy is he though that he's got a healthy Keenan Allen this year? They started to have that connection when Keenan Allen looked like he was going to have that career year, and then it ended early because of a lacerated kidney, and that he was on pace to set records. Well, now I think you're seeing that again with those two. You
are, and Keenan Allen is. I'd put him up there. Antonio Brown's the best route runner in the NFL, but Keenan Allen's not far behind when he's healthy.
Yep.
And really going into the Buffalo game when they played Buffalo, And you saw that how going back a couple weeks, how Buffalo was playing off-man coverage, kind of a quarter zone look at times too. I'm watching this tape saying they can't do that to Keenan Allen. They did, and look what he did. Look what he did in Dallas, and look what he continues to do. And it's really not a ton of deep balls. I mean, he can catch a deep ball, run the fade from the slot. It's those deep intermediate cuts where he separates immediately. And Phillip Rivers is so dialed in. The ball comes out while he's breaking. He finds the open window, and now you got to catch and run opportunity. He is so talented, so smooth.
It's more of that the intermediate to deep stuff than the at or near the line of scrimmage. His yards per catch is up nearly 3 yards, or more than 3 yards from last year. So that certainly has helped his fantasy value. Already has a career high in catches and yards, also, and getting there on touchdowns.
Yeah, all in a year coming off of an ACL reconstruction. It's
a little footnote on Hunter Henry is he has a younger brother who I saw Mort tweet about this yesterday, who is regarded, he's like a high school prospect. And Mort's like, you guys are either Mort retweeted somebody or Mort added the commentary that like, you think Hunter's a good prospect? Wait till you see his kid brother. That kid can really play. Last piece of news here is that Kenny Britt has signed with the Patriots. He, of course, cleared waivers on Monday. He was with the Cleveland Browns. Matt, there's a lot to unpackage at times with Kenny Britt. He's a player that clearly was unhappy in Cleveland, and clearly they were unhappy with him. A bust, no matter how you describe it in terms of what he did versus what he was paid by the Browns. From a talent perspective at all, can you see an impact for him in New England? Again, they have 3 games left in their regular season, but this is a signing for the potentially next 8 weeks, not just the next 3 weeks. What can he bring to this offense?
Well, I think a little bit more size, first of all. Yeah. So talking about before the show, we're saying what happened Monday night down in Miami. If you watch that game, and you don't need the film, just watch the TV copy. They couldn't get off the line of scrimmage. Yeah.
And that's always Devontae Adams can do that. Those guys couldn't do it on Monday.
That's always been the blueprint, not to beating Tom Brady, but to competing with him and making things harder for him. Jam the wide receivers, rush the passer. It's not complicated. We talk about scheme all the time. Sometimes it just comes down to little details and beating the man across from you and winning one-on-one matchups. That's what they did. You disrupt the release, and now Gronk's not in there.
Yep.
Right.
Now you limit the throws inside of the numbers. It's gonna reflect in how Tom Brady plays, how that offense operates. I don't think this is a direct reflection of this. I think this is New England and their advanced scouting, an opportunity here that someone who might fit in their system. Obviously not a fantasy impact this year. We all know that. But going into next season, could he be a guy that can run the inside seam route? Could he be a guy that can run the deep corner route in the red zone? Sure, he has that ability. And I always think about this. I've been on some bad teams in the NFL, but never been on a team that was 0-13, 0-40. I don't even know what it'd be like to go to work. That'd be so hard, so challenging. I'm not saying you don't, because you're a professional. That's what you're paid to do. Yep. You have to do that. But even from a coaching perspective, how do you get guys in the meeting room to buy in?
Thomas. Yeah. That's the guy I'd love to talk to.
Right? One of the great perils you run in not intentionally losing, but sort of going through this, whatever you want to call it, the tanking process.
Right.
It's one of the great perils you run is you guys become habitual losers, unfortunately, and that's not their fault.
Right. So that's why I brought that up, because going to this winning culture, because let's be honest, everyone's chasing the Patriots, not the record, how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And football is really more about the culture you have in the building. Okay, the head coach has to be the most important man in the building. People disagree with me. Talk about the GM, the owner. I don't care. The head coach has to be the CEO of the building. Okay, and if you have people that buy into something with that talent level, professional talent level, you're going to have a chance. You're going to have a chance. So maybe him going to a new culture, that winning culture, that proven winning culture, elevates his game a little bit.
Well, it certainly can. There's nowhere to go but up. We'll see if he plays this Sunday against the Steelers. At the very least, I expect him on the field for the Patriots' final 2 games of the regular season. We're calling this next segment Backs with Bowen. Obviously, Matt, this is your forte is the film stuff. We love watching, we love reading and listening and watching to your film breakdowns all over ESPN, whether it's on .com, you name it. Some players here that have really made a mark of late. And we're going to let you sort of trust your eyes here, because the numbers might tell us one thing and your eyes might tell us a different thing, or might confirm what we're seeing. Alex Collins has been remarkable for the Ravens. To think this guy was cut during cutdown weekend and was actually out of work for a couple of days. He scored a touchdown in 4 straight games on the ground. You buying him as a legit feature workhorse back for this team?
I am. I have him as, I think, RB13 this week. Yeah. And I would have no problem putting him at RB12 or 11. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
Given the matchup, given the volume he gets every week. And that's the thing. You thought when Woodhead came back that some of that volume would drop. We talk about Buck Allen this season, that nothing's really changed in the last couple weeks with counts. And he runs like he's 235, 240.
Yeah.
Okay, find me a defensive back that wants to tackle him for 4 quarters. You're not going to. The way he drops he drops the hammer on contact.
Yeah.
He's got good footwork, and everyone knows the story about the Irish dancing, right?
Yep.
That's obviously coming to play. Really, maybe it does work. I don't know, but he can scoot outside. And the thing that grabs me on film is he's got that sudden acceleration when he hits the edge, and you wouldn't expect it given his running style. You think, okay, this is a guy who's between the tackles. That's all he does, but he can get outside. And you're also seeing he's got a little versatility. Now, he's not going to, run an angle route like Christian McCaffrey all day long. Sure. But can he catch the check down and create? Yes. Can he be involved in the screen game? Sure. Can he burst the flat and make a defender miss? He did on Sunday night. And that's a great thing about it. When you tackle him, don't give him that shoulder stuff. Don't give it to me. It's not going to work. If I'm your defensive back coach, we're playing Alex Collins, and you go in there and try to throw a shoulder at him, one, you're going to get yourself hurt.
He's going to run over you.
Yeah, he's going to get yourself hurt. But now I got to replace you because you just missed a tackle for an explosive game. And that's what he did the other night on a little swing route or a flat route. And I think it was Davis, the safety from
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Pittsburgh came up and try to blow him up. You can't blow up pro backs. Yep. You can't.
Right.
Not a guy who's this physical.
He has been certainly very impressive for Baltimore after being cut by Seattle.
Think Seattle would like him back right now?
Yeah, jeez, how nice would that be? Jamal Williams, a 5th-round pick who, as a rookie, has gone from 3rd string to 2nd string to starter to 2nd string to starter again for Green Bay. The numbers are awesome. You like this player as much as it seems like his fantasy rosterers like him?
I like him. I like the story, too. We just talked about Stephania, availability over time. Right. This is a great example.
Yep.
He does not have the versatility of Ty Montgomery. He never will.
Sure.
He does not have the big play ability of Jones in terms of the footwork, the ability to get real small in the hole and then take off. But can he get downhill? All day long. Mm-hmm. And he's shown that he can play a role in the passing game. Again, similar to Collins, screens, checkdowns, balls to the flat. You're not going to use him like Kenyon Drake, like we saw on Monday night.
Right.
But I really believe this, I've always felt this about Mike McCarthy. Even, before the Aaron Rodgers injury, he wants balance in the offense. He does. He reminds me of Sean Payton a little bit in his game plans. Mm-hmm. And we always talk about Sean Payton. He's up there in the top tier of play calling.
Yep.
Mike McCarthy takes a lot of heat for his play calling, but I really believe he wants to be like the Saints are this year. Mm-hmm. Very balanced. 50-50 down the middle. Let's run the ball. Let's set up the passing game. Or let's pass to set up the run. But you got to have a physical back who can have a high volume day to do that.
Mike McCarthy cut his teeth in San Francisco amongst his previous stops, and the 2 tight end set was a big part of what they were doing. They built it to run the football, throw the ball. Something they tried to get back to this year with Martellus Bennett, Lance Kendricks. But you're right, balance. That's been like, we'll talk about a team that has a coach that kind of like you are what you know, what you grew up as. Mike McCarthy has kind of always been this way. We just may not think of it in that vein because you got Aaron Rodgers and you've got every year they find a new wide receiver that's legit in Green Bay. But Jamal Williams has been, if nothing else, steadying for them because where would they be without him on offense right now? With a backup quarterback, Aaron Jones hurt, offensive tackles banged up throughout the year. It's been a nice find for them out of BYU. I think the 5th round.
You know what's interesting is you talk about balance with them in their backfield. They've tried to do that before, but they have had kind of a Seattle-like problem in that they haven't been able to have backs stay healthy. And this goes back years and years. I mean, not just to Ty Montgomery. So and even before, I'm trying to think of who it was that there was a rookie that was solid that ended up on IR the first year, but they have had problems.
Well, James Starks became a starter late, during that Super Bowl run back.
Yes, that's exactly. That's the one I'm talking about, and that's the problem. Is he would say at the start of the season that we're going to share the workload. It would never work out that way.
Right. When people get frustrated with coaches and underutilizing running backs, part of the fear for coaches is that you can't there are very few running backs that can be Frank Gore or LaShawn McCoy and handle 30 touches in a given game and be fine the following Sunday.
Field, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
The return of Aaron Rodgers to this offense, is there any concern or question as to how that changes Jamal Williams' usage? Understanding that, we're not really sure what to expect now.
My personal opinion will be, if anything, it helps him. If anything, it softens the box a little bit, not just sort of oversimplify things, right? Like, I don't know what the percentage of number of stacked boxes Brett Hundley saw, but I would just think that, like, you have Aaron Rodgers out there, probably a lot. I'd imagine with Aaron Rodgers, like, if you're going to tempt fate, I'm not tempting fate by putting the football in Aaron Rodgers' hands. I'm putting the football in somebody else's hands. So I would think, if anything, it helps him.
In the past, what teams have done against Aaron Rodgers, and even going back to The Chicago Bears defenses that used to be very talented is they play 7-man front. That means you have 7 people in the run box. Sometimes it goes down to 6. Okay, because you have 2 deep safeties over the top because you have to. You don't want to give it the deep ball.
You don't want to give it the deep ball.
Yeah, the deep ball gets you beat. Right. Let's just be honest. That loses games. That loses jobs in the NFL.
Yep.
So if you're playing against Aaron Rodgers, a lot of times you're going to have lighter run fronts.
Yep.
So I think that's a positive here. It's like the running game.
A defensive coordinator rather, death by 1,000 paper cuts against the Packers
they would.
than the alternative. All right, Samaje Perine, a player that entered the NFL with a bit of a claim. He had the most rushing yards in a single game in college football Division I history, over 400 against Kansas. Takes over as a starter because of yes.
Yeah,
my sister went to Kansas, but I know Big 12 defense.
Kansas is not anymore. The Dana Stubblefield days are long gone.
Nice. Dana Stubblefield was a good player.
Well, remember,
That's
he
right.
was a Niner.
That's right.
So. That history I follow.
Perine has become the starter for Washington. It's been a bit up and down.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people want to make a comparison to Mike Clay's going to join us in a little bit. Is there any Jeremy Langford in him? Right, like the opportunity's been there. He's had some good moments, but he's mostly just an average runner. Or do you think he's a player that you think could be a long-term starter for Washington?
I don't think we have a big enough sample size yet.
Okay,
but I do like that his game has changed a little bit from the start of the season. Because going back to the summer, I did a story for fantasy on kind of sleepers, guys that I thought that could play a role, and he was one of those players just based on his college tape and based on a healthy offensive line. That's another thing you have to talk about. Because that offensive line in Washington has not been healthy all year. It's not been healthy all year. I also think that what you're seeing from a defensive perspective is there's no Pierre Garçon. There's no speed of Deshaun Jackson outside. I could roll a safety down.
Yep.
I'm going to. I am going to all day. I know Cousins can sling it. I don't care. I'm putting a safety down there and stopping that run game. But one thing about this young man is that his running style has changed a little bit. If you go back to earlier films, hesitation.
Yep.
Hesitation. You can't do that in the league. You can't. You can get away with it against Kansas. You get away with it.
Right.
Okay? You can get away with it against Kansas. You cannot get away with it against Philly, against New York, against Dallas. You can't do that. You have to hit the hole and go. Sometimes getting 2 is better than getting -2. Okay? So get 2. If that's all it's going to be, get 2.
I mean, I'm no math major, but that sounds about right.
2. And then that 2's going to turn to 3, so turn to 4,
and
then you're going to pop 1. And I mean, pop 1, then you're going to get 9, 10.
Right.
And you start adding those together, now you can have a 100-yard day. I think he's a physical player. I don't think he has great wiggle to his game, but he's got good enough feet to slip a tackle, make a defender miss in the hole. And he's a downhill physical runner. But in terms of where he's going to be future-wise, I want to see him with a healthy offensive line. I want to see him with guys on the outside that are consistently making plays.
Sure.
And have a complete offensive line. We'll get a better feel.
A player that was awesome on Monday night was Kenyon Drake.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think people, and I said this as much yesterday on the podcast, I said it on Twitter on Monday night, was like the Jay Ajayi trade made a lot more sense to me on Monday night after I saw Kenyon Drake in a feature role. And he's had a feature role over the past couple of games. But this guy seems like the real deal. The but the narrative coming out of Alabama was he's a part-time player because he played behind, amongst other players,
Derrick Henry.
We think this could be a player that could handle 20 to 25 touches every single week.
We had 30 Monday night, didn't he?
Yeah.
30 total? 30 total. I think that's a little too high.
Yeah, it's a big number. Yeah. Huge number. Yep.
But I understand why that happened. If you look at the game plan Monday night, I think Adam Gase did an excellent job. That's the best Jay Cutler's played all season, obviously.
Yep.
But look at the matchups they created with Drake. Running the slant route and then just run. The fade route was like a turkey bowl play.
Right.
Yeah. It was just, hey, go down the field.
I'm faster than you.
Yeah, I got a linebacker outside who's not comfortable playing off man, does not know how to turn and run, and does not know how to identify routes within the stem. So, yeah, it was a matchup from the start. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a split in terms. I still think he can get to 20 carries. I think that's where you want to stop it, though. Sure. You start getting 25, 27 carries. I don't know if the longevity is there, and then you start talking about availability issues.
Right.
Does he have the durability?
And he had some injury issues in college.
Right. Yep.
Tough guy, though. Always came back quickly, but still hurt.
What everyone saw on Monday night was the move he put. Was it Patrick Chung?
Yeah.
The spin move. And that was nasty.
Yep.
It was nasty.
That was nasty. Yep.
And if you drop your head as a tackler in the NFL, these guys can do that to you.
Yep.
But I'll be honest. If I'm coming through the hole, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not expecting him to pull that spin move off right there. And that was nasty. But what impresses me more is his physicality in the hole.
Yeah.
That really has jumped out to me. It really has. Because even going back to Bama, Bama, who's a big play guy, could run out of the backfield, versatility, special teams impact. Now you're seeing what he can do with more volume and a number one role and his physical approach to the game.
Yep.
I got him as RB11 this week.
quite a find for the Miami Dolphins. And again, I tip my cap to the way they have utilized him as a feature back. Let's wrap it here, Matt, with the two Titans running backs, DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry. There are times where it's maddening to watch DeMarco Murray continue to rush the football 15 to 20 times per game. Maybe there's not a lot of daylight there, but what do you see from DeMarco Murray? Is the drop as precipitous as it feels in some ways, and is there any reason you can find that Derrick Henry is not the starter for this team every single week?
Well, I think, first of all, it's the offense in Tennessee. I think they don't have an identity. I don't think they know what they want to be. I think the head coach wants to run the football. I think he would run the football 70 times a game if he could, and play a double-wing offense.
Right.
I really believe that.
Sure.
But you have Mariota. Okay, you have some spread concepts that are mixed in. You have some zone read. You have some sprint passes. You have some wider sets in the field. Murray and Henry aren't a fit for that.
Right.
Now you can run power out of spread. Okay, I believe that.
Yep.
But they have their own issues with who they want to be in terms of an offensive football team. Sure. From a strictly talent perspective, measurable speed, size, explosive playability, it's Derrick Henry all day. All day.
Right.
It's all day. Okay, and now there's certain things we can't see in terms of how the film is graded. Maybe it's in pass pro. Maybe it's how they run routes. Okay, maybe it's what the hole they're supposed to hit or what they can get that's giving more snaps. But I have last week, Derrick Henry had 13 snaps.
Yeah.
13.
Matt,
it's not enough.
Yep.
No, we've been saying it. If we had any influence on the Titans, Derrick Henry would be playing more, but apparently we don't.
We do not have enough influence over the Titans. We'll work on that, though.
I don't think right now, and you can see it in our rankings this week, Murray's dropped out. He's down that flex area right now.
He's a low-end flex for me this week. Like you're hoping for a touchdown in a matchup that all of a sudden doesn't feel so good, right? Like that San Francisco matchup, not as cushy as it was 4 weeks ago. Matt, you got a column coming out on Friday, which overviews some players that are kind of on that fringe of considering them for your Week 15 matchup, including, amongst other players, D.D. Westbrook. So you can find that column. That'll be up on Friday?
Yes, correct?
Friday. Friday morning, hopefully, for Matt's column. Find him on Twitter, at MattBowen41. Instagram, MattBowen41. Film breakdowns aplenty. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I enjoyed it.
So much fun to have you.
People usually put a lot of thought in the gifts they give during the holidays. Like, I've been scouring ideas all across the internet.
Been thinking about what to get me?
You know something, Stephania? I actually got a good recommendation for you from Daniel, so hats off to Daniel.
Oh.
But sometimes the best gift ideas are the ones right in front of you. And I'm not talking about this computer screen, because there are things you use every day, like Bombas socks. Bombas are the most comfortable socks in the history of feet. Like, literally, like the entire history of feet. Back when people had webbed feet. Was that the case back in the day? I don't know. They're made from premium cotton, and Bombas stay warm in the winter, and it's freezing in
I could use some right about now in the
Bristol.
20-degree weather.
Freezing here right now, and they stay cool in the summer, too. And every pair comes with a built-in blister tab, innovative arch support, stay-up technology.
Very important.
And a seamless toe. All this stuff is critical. They're the gift that keeps on giving. Seriously, because for every pair of Bombas you buy, they donate a pair to somebody in need, which is awesome and a really cool initiative they endeavor into. So spread some holiday cheer with Bombas. They have great discounts when you buy in bulk, awesome gift boxes, holiday-themed socks, even ski socks. Bombas has everything for every occasion. Quality and comfort are completely guaranteed. Buy the perfect gift for everyone on your list at bombas.com/focus today and get 20% off your very first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/focus for 20% off. Bombas.com/focus.
Seeing your team win is thrilling. Watching them win in overtime is even better. And the best of all, enjoying some award-winning Larceny wheated bourbon while you cheer them on. Larceny is made with more wheat for a smoother taste. Our master distillers hand-select only the finest barrels for a true small batch bourbon. Get caught in the act. Unlock the smoothness of Larceny bourbon. Larceny Bourbon, Bardstown, Kentucky. 46% alcohol by volume. Think wisely, drink wisely.
Hear that? That's the sound of speechless. Like when you give her an unforgettable gift from Jared the Galleria of Jewelry. Whether it's one of the hundreds of new pieces in our collection, one of the exclusive pieces you can only find at Jared, or a custom piece we create just for you, Jared is the place to find the gift.
I love it.
That takes her breath away. And that's why he went to Jared.
Fantasy. You're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy focus.
We're back, and we pivot from one great guest to another. So thanks to Matt Bowen for joining us today. And then we now welcome in Mike Clay, one of our usual guests here. And Mike is well known around ESPN for his hot takes.
Uh-oh.
And his last one
and his pronunciation of words.
Right. Yeah, Detroit.
I blame the skook for that.
So there's a column that we do each week. It's an Insiders Roundtable on ESPN, and we file it by Tuesday at noon. So it usually goes out on Wednesday morning.
I have no idea where this is going right now.
Flops, crucial drafts, etc. It's a roundtable of like 5 questions a week, and each week they ask us to pick a fringe fantasy player who should be started this weekend. So you tend to go with players that,
they're fringe.
They could bust.
Okay,
they could be great.
Yeah.
I went with Mike Davis. He's hurt. And Matt Bowen went with D.D. Westbrook. Paul Sanda went with Mike Sanda went with Paul Richardson. Mike Clay, in an effort to scorch the earth on fire to make Bristol warm again, went with Drew Brees.
Yeah, he's fringe. Who's that guy? Is he good?
All right. Literally, the first sentence of this is, we've come to the point where Brees is, in fact, a fringe fantasy starter. He's had 2 top 10s this season.
I know, I get it.
He is.
It's Drew Brees.
He is a fringe fantasy starter.
Stop it.
That's the definition. This is like the people that complain on Twitter when we have a sleeper that is a guy that we've heard of before. Just because, by definition, they are a sleeper if they're going late in drafts, right?
You're ridiculous.
No, it counts.
So Tom Brady's had 2 games where he hasn't had 10 points, so I could put him down as my fringe starter this week. Is that okay?
No, that's way different.
Brees, who's quarterback 9 this season, is fringe. I'm just kidding. We're just busting
your chops. We're giving you a hard time.
We got to chuckle out of that one.
But still, it is a
I'm
bit
not
of
taking it.
It is a bit of a shock to see the Drew Brees name as a fringe player.
Yeah.
I mean...
That I would agree.
Now we're talking.
Maybe the story is less about Mike's choice, more about the idea that Drew Brees has been, relative to his own standards, not as good this year for fantasy
I think
purposes.
this is turned around. I've convinced you now. See what happened?
There we go. Mike, you're either we are a quick study or you are a very convincing ranker. Speaking of ranks, let's get to some fringe starters that I think are actually more fringe. And you have a legit question this week, Mike. If you roster Alex Smith, you have him as 15 in your ranks this week. I've got him inside my top 10, and part is because that quarterback position has been watered down of late. But you think this Chargers defense, as we all know, you think it is the real deal. Absolutely.
Second fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks over the past 8 weeks, and I know Alex Smith this year is third at the position in fantasy points. He's been good overall, but not as much lately. In fact, he's finished 20th or worse at the position 3 of his past 4 outings. So, he's been all over the place. He's struggled over the past month or so, and you're playing a very good defense in a, let's be honest, for the Chargers, they have to win this game. The Chiefs could probably get away with a loss here. It's going to make their road tougher, but the Chargers have to go in there, and they have to win this game. They've been playing better. It would not surprise me if the Chiefs didn't score more than 1 touchdown in this game.
Yeah, Alex Smith got some really bad luck last week. Like drop pass from Demetrius Harris. Travis Kelce had a touchdown that was overturned upon review. My issue is less with the Chargers defense. It's more just you look at the players that are in that same mix. Like, just to give you a context, and Stephania, this is not a pot shot here, but like Jimmy Garoppolo is 15th in the quarterback ranking. He has ascended that rapidly. There are that many quarterbacks with sketchy matchups. Like, how are you confident in a Kirk Cousins, for example, coming off of that poor performance against the Chargers? Case Keenum, people are still sort of feeling like the jury is out. What do you do with Matt Ryan? The matchup could not be more perfect for Matt Ryan on Monday night against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Part of the reason why Alex Smith scoots inside my top 10. Nick Foles, Mike, and you are a massive, as we know, you are an Eagles fan. You have a lot of confidence in Nick Foles, 8th in your rankings this week. 8th inside the top 10.
Yeah, I like him. Giants have allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. They have problems there. That was with a lot of guys that are out now who were there earlier in the season, including Janoris Jenkins. They have big problems at the cornerback spot. So I do like, you look back at Foles' career, and this includes when he was with the Rams and he had problems there. And just look at his rate stats. Look at completion percentage. Look at off-target percentage, yards per attempt, interception rate. They're almost identical to Carson Wentz's numbers just this season, not even including last year. So, he's not going to make as many big plays. He's not going to make as many plays with his legs either. But at the same time, his throwing efficiency has been similar. So, I think he can at least with a good supporting cast around him, a supporting cast that has actually raised Carson Wentz from good to great numbers this season. I think they can do the same for Foles and make him a viable or fringe fantasy starter.
I think you just told me that he's basically Carson Wentz. Basically.
Exactly. Without the legs, right? Yeah. Maybe better. Who knows?
Oh, wow.
I'm kidding.
A couple of question marks here, Mike, I just would run by you. I just mentioned him, but Matt Ryan, he's really low in your ranks. You have him the lowest amongst anybody ranking him this week. The range is 10 for Tristan. You have him 16. I have him 15. You have been a sort of last week you were bullish on Matt Ryan. This week, again, an excellent matchup against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Is the reason why you're that low just because Matt Ryan hasn't played that well of late? That's it?
Yeah, well, I mean, his best weekly finish is 10th this season, so I was definitely bold last week. I'll take the L there. I was dead wrong. I mean, we talked about it. I missed, he did have some opportunities for touchdowns. He threw he threw at least one interception into the end zone. There were chances. He actually had another throw in the end zone that was almost complete for what could have been a third touchdown, but he didn't get it. Next play, they ran it in. He was close to having a 3-touchdown game, but it was a disaster. That said, I mean, it's hard to ignore what's gone wrong, what's gone on all season long with him, and now at Tampa Bay, road game, it should be a plus matchup, but you can't trust him.
I'm once again making that decision. Case Keenum, Matt Ryan. Case Keenum, Matt Ryan. Case Keenum, of course, faces the Cincinnati Bengals this weekend. That game is at home in Minnesota. You're a little bit low, though, on Blake Bortles. Are you not convinced? Last quarterback I wanted to ask you about, Mike, because he is a player that some people are saying this could be my Carson Wentz replacement or a streamer for this week. Not buying into it?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, what's he been? Top 10, 3 in a row, but before that only had one top 10. So, I'm not buying into the recency bias here, I suppose. You can throw on Houston, certainly, but this is still one of the run-heaviest teams in the NFL. If they're ahead in this game, it's going to be a lot of Fournette. We saw Chris Ivory running the ball as well. It's just not a guy I feel super ecstatic about. You worry sometimes about the volume. If he only throws 20 passes, you're probably not going to get much out of him, and they are heavy favorites in this game, double digits. So I'm not feeling too great there.
I think as we get through the season, we tend to our ranks kind of streamline, right? We have a better feel for who the players are, what the matchups actually represent. So we don't have a ton of discrepancies in our running back ranks. I mean, I've got Deion Lewis inside my top 20. You've got him at 22, for example, Mike. Probably, I'm assuming your issue is the lack of touchdowns there for Lewis.
Yeah, I get nervous when I use him. I have him on a few dynasty teams where I picked him up years ago, and it makes me nervous to use him because what we saw with Miami, first of all, I mean, second half, him and Rex Burkhead barely played because they were getting smoked and they were playing in comeback mode. Right. James White was on the field, and then when they get to the goal line, it's Rex Burkhead time. So he's actually, believe it or not, he's only finished better than 19th at the position twice all season long, despite playing very good football. So that definitely makes me nervous.
He's so good.
He is really good.
When the ball's in his hands, good things happen. I wonder if the Patriots have some sort of not realization, not that these guys need my advice, but if you go back and watch a tape against Miami, there was 2 players that played well for them. One of them was Deion Lewis. But DeMarco Murray still cracked your top 20, Mike. I know you're not a massive fan of Murray's game. Why the confidence in him inside the top 20?
I wouldn't say that. I think I've been kind of a Murray apologist throughout his career. I think he's especially in Dallas early in his career. I do like him, but it's a good matchup. He's playing against the 49ers, your third most fantasy points allowed to running backs over the past 8 weeks. And whether we like it or not, he's still the lead back there. He's had more carries than Derrick Henry in 9 of 13 games, and he's always has more targets. He's clearly their more viable asset in the passing game. Henry just doesn't make an impact in that regard. So I think he has enough volume. The matchup is good enough that he's a top 20 play.
All right, fair enough. I disagree with you, but you're entitled to your opinion. It's wrong, but you're entitled to an opinion.
I guess we'll find out.
I've got him outside my top 30. Again, at some point you got to go with what you see, and the production sort of speaks for itself with DeMarco Murray, who 2.94 yards per carry since week 6. That's 43rd out of 45 qualified running backs. He doesn't have a 10-yard run in 4 of his last 6 games. We have a big question mark that our friend Matt Bowen just answered, Mike, and he believes, and I'm with him, that Jordy Nelson belongs inside your top 15 this week with Aaron Rodgers back under center. Do you think there's a chance that your rank of him at 21 will move up notably by the end of the week?
I don't think so. I think even before, and listen, Jordy Nelson was a terrific fantasy asset in the first month and a half while Rodgers played, but there was also that transition starting where Devontae Adams was becoming the number 1, and you were seeing that treatment from other teams, most notably Xavier Rhodes shadowing him. So, maybe that benefits Nelson, frankly, if they put the top corner on Adams. It's very possible, but I'm not willing to go all in just yet. Do we think that he disappeared just because Rodgers was out. Yes. I mean, I'm sure that was a big part of it, but he hasn't finished better than 43rd in a week since week 6. I'm not sure if he just instantly becomes a superstar again with Rodgers back under center. And I will say this, though, Carolina's secondary corner play has been pretty bad, so maybe that helps him as well. But I think ranking him as a borderline top 20 play is fair in this first week with Rodgers back.
Well, in that same game, conversely, you have immense confidence in Devin Funchess, who has certainly emerged into a top wide receiver role for Carolina, but you happen to particularly love this matchup, which will be highlighted in your wide receiver cornerback piece at some point later on this week on ESPN.com. Devin Funchess draws which Packers cornerback, in your opinion?
Yeah, we'll see which one. I don't know if they'll shadow him. They used Devon House 2 weeks ago to shadow. Last week they used Demarius Randall against Josh Gordon, but House was doubtful in that game, surprisingly played, so maybe they go back to House this week. I don't think it matters. Both guys have struggled badly. They're the two perimeter corners for this team. Packers getting destroyed by wide receivers all season long. So I think Funchess, he's been he's 5th in fantasy points since they traded Kelvin Benjamin, seeing 8 targets a game. I think he's a top 10 play.
Interesting. We'll see. I've got him. I still have him as a starter. I guess I have a wide receiver 22 this week, but that could change. My big concern with him is he's failed to catch more than 5 passes in 7 of 8 games. So the good target volume, but the catch rate's low, in part because Cam Newton has struggled as a thrower this year. He just has. He's been great with his legs, obviously, but as a thrower, Cam Newton has struggled once again. Couple of wide receivers here, Mike, and perhaps it's a matchup thing. You are afraid of Mike Wallace this week, who has been pretty good for the Baltimore Ravens. They now play the Cleveland Browns. Is that why he's unranked for you?
Yeah, Cleveland has they're pretty decent at corner. Jason McCourty's taken a little bit of a step back the past few weeks, but he is a shadow corner. He's played well overall this season, so I think it is a tough matchup, assuming McCourty shadows him on the outside. So, yeah, I'm worried about that one. And I'm worried about the Baltimore passing game altogether because you also have Jeremy Maclin primarily lining up in the slot, and they'll be on Buddy Calhoun, who's been pretty good this season as well. One of the best corners in terms of allowing wide receiver efficiency all season long. So, would not surprise me if that offense certainly the passing game came back to earth a bit.
I'm riding the proverbial hot hand here, which is why I have him inside my top 40. Again, not advocating for him to start in your lineup, but 5 straight games with at least 9.8 points for Mike Wallace, who we know needs just one big one to make your decision worth it. It would have been probably more fitting to go with Paul Richardson as your pick for a fringe fantasy starter this week. Mike, you've got him at 35 at wide receiver. Perhaps you just didn't want to double dip with Mike Sando, but you also like this matchup very much.
No, I'll stick with Drew Brees on the fringe fantasy starter. But yeah, Richardson, a bunch of touchdowns this season. I love the target, 7+3 of his past 4 games. The explosive nature of his game, if he gets 7 or so targets a game, that's outstanding. So he's going to see Troy Hill, Kayvon Webster's out with that injury. Yep. Brutal torn Achilles. You could see it right away. It's unfortunate. But Troy Hill filling in, that's a big problem area. He's going to see a lot of him in this game.
All right, there you have it. I have him at 50 in my ranks, so not as confident. But Mike makes a compelling case for me to potentially move Paul Richardson higher up in my ranks. Mike, thank you for joining us today. We'll speak to you again, I'm sure, sometime soon. And people that are watching Matthew's TV show today can catch Mike, who will be on that show when it airs at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks a lot.
And here we go. That's the end of the show for today.
I have one thing I want to throw in. This is to a listener. It's John Elliott Jr.'s Twitter handle is J.E. Elliott Jr. 13. And back a year ago when we did our live show in Philly, he had bought tickets to the show. He's a huge fan of the 06010. And then something came up at the last minute. He had an obligation and he had to give up his tickets to the show. And he was very, very sad that he missed out. And then this year, just staying in touch with him, he had said he was hoping for a shout out around his birthday. And obviously there's been so much going on in the world of football that we haven't been able to do it. So just wanted to give him a shout out from the 06010 for his birthday. Happy birthday, John Elliott Jr., fan of the 06010. And maybe you'll catch us at a live show next year.
That's right. John Elliott Jr. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Friend. Happy birthday to you. That is very cool. We appreciate his support and all those who listen to the podcast, well, at least download it every single day. In the meantime, find Stephania on Twitter, StephaniaB87, and on Instagram, and on Twitter at Stephania_ESPN. He is Mike Clay NFL, both on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Field Yates. Thursday, we're back. You know what we're doing. We're previewing the Thursday night game. Stephania will have a bunch of injury updates, perhaps some news on Alvin Kamara, amongst other players. A lot of important decisions to make as we enter Week 15 of the NFL season. Talk to you guys then. Playoffs. Peace out.
The theme song of the Fantasy Focus was created and performed by Eric Hutchinson. Check out more of his music at erichutchinson.com. Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. For more great podcasts, listen on the ESPN app or subscribe on iTunes.
You can always count on Bud Light, just like you can always count on Always Game Gary. No bar is too far. No wing sauce is too hot. Not for Gary. Always Game Gary is famous among friends. He deserves a Bud Light. Enjoy responsibly. Bud Light Beer, AB, St. Louis, Missouri.